Welcome to the Conservative Book Review. My guest today is Maryam Henein,
Henein.
correct? Henein. That was close, man. I practiced that too. So make sure we don't miss anything here. She's written a great new book called Operation George Floyd, a multi-layered psyop exposed. She's also known as the Bee Lady. And I thought that was interesting. And I went to your site as well on that. She's originally from Montreal, Canada. She's an award winning 2010 documentary she directed rather the award-winning 2010 documentary "Vanishing of the Bees," and I want to get into that too if we can today. She is a functional medicine coach and consultant. See, I was a drug rep for 22 years, so we were working opposite sides of the street. It was just
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. And she also has, well, we need to say that the honeycolony.com, a thriving online health magazine and marketplace. Her latest documentary, which I've seen twice, so I highly recommend it, The Real Timeline on George Floyd. And once again, Maryam Henein. Did I get it?
Thank you,
I
Mark.
just good. I
Thank
just
you.
lost your voice for a second.
Yeah, I turned it off because there was a truck passing by.
Well, that's a God. Hey, my cat might jump up on my desk, so
That's nice. I'd rather have a cat than a truck.
I understand. So, how in the world did you get involved with the George Floyd thing?
That's a good question. I was in the jungles of Costa Rica. I've been covering vaccines since 2012, and I took Zach Voorhees, who I was with at the time, the Google whistleblower, and he asked me to choke him the day that George died. And I said,
Mhm.
"What?" And he's like, I want to do the George Floyd challenge. So I told him if he wanted to know how George died, I would have to call the medical examiner. So I did. And I was literally the first in the entire nation. And I was told that it was going to take weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the next day, CNN leaked some preliminary reports. So I was like, how is that happening? And I realized that they were sowing discord. And
Mhm.
I didn't tap out. And it's been 4.5 years. And it's a colossal book. I realized that I've written it. I was assigned to write it for the future records. Here we are 50 years later having hearings for JFK. So
Mhm.
my book is ahead of its time, just like me.
At the time, I was as I said before, a drug rep working for one of the major pharmaceutical companies. So I had access to literally 100 or so doctors easily. So I began polling them on the how do you suffocate someone by kneeling on the side of their neck question. And every one of them said that you can't do that. They said you would have to put down with such force that you probably would have broken the neck if you were going to try to stop the trachea. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, what really happened here?
Well, on
And
one of the layers, it's a multi-layered. It's like a Russian doll. So this was literally the duty to intervene exercise. I found a training day. I obtained over 200 internal emails between the government and the MPD. I have ties to Podesta. So there's a reason why I'm so censored. And for you and your audience to just put yourself in my place, to be as brilliant as I am and to have lost Venmo, Vimeo, PayPal, GoFundMe, Instacart, Airbnb, smeared on national television, persecuted by the government. I've even lost Bumble. Get it? The bee lady loses Bumble. So I'm on some crap list somewhere,
mhm.
and the information that I have is quite dangerous, but it's basically showing you how the sausage is made. I mean, I would really challenge anyone to have written this. Um, so it's full of footnotes. It's full of Freedom of Information Act, like real journalists, not parrots and
Mhm.
prostitutes. So the fact that it's been censored and you can only get it on my website, which I hope you'll include the links. It's Maryam Henein.
We'll put all your links up at the end,
Thank
I
you.
promise. Yeah, all of
Yeah,
them.
thank you.
Now, you mentioned something to me on the phone the other day. You said there were literally it took 3 George Floyds to make George Floyd. What did you mean by that?
So there's a lot of talk about all his scholarships. And in August, there was a Timothy Javits attorney that came forth and said that George, the real George, had died. But what happens in these operations is that they sew in red herrings for the people who are not going to go as deep as someone like I would.
Mhm.
And a Floyd George was the one who played at the Temple Cats game. So it's a amalgamation of different George Floyds or Floyd Georges. And the boy there, well, he was a boy at the time who was at the Temple the game, remembers them saying Floyd George because he and his brother joked about how it sounded like Boy George. And then he
Mhm.
went ahead and reached out to the players. And I also reached out to one of the players and I said, listen, I know this isn't George Floyd. And his response to me was, what can I say? Which was quite the answer in itself.
Yeah. Now, at one point, George Floyd, or at least one of them, was a porn star.
Yeah, no, that is the same George
Same
Perry
one.
Floyd. Yeah. I also bought the footage. I bought the debt from Cup Foods, which is also pretty badass. In addition to buying all the footage with my own money,
Mm.
and so I bought the debt, and then I ran a Freedom of Information Act on his Social Security card, and had to I waited a year to find a PI with the balls to help me, and found the internal documents and hush money for $5 million to someone, to a baby mama and a child that nobody knows about 24 days before George died. So you can see why this would be dangerous, right? Because I'm blowing the holes all off all the BS.
Mhm. I understand completely. I think I might have mentioned on the phone that I was involved with Sheriff Arpaio in Arizona during his Obama documents investigation, and I'd get these random emails that I was going to go to prison for helping Sheriff Joe commit fraud, and that I was going to be married to a guy who was an axe killer and keeps telling me I'd look good in a sundress. But the bottom line is yeah, oh yeah, and they sent fake anthrax to Sheriff Joe's office, and there were all kind of harassment things that went on. And of course the weird thing is, and I'm sure you know this feeling better than anybody, is when you actually know what the hell's going on and you're watching what the news media does to the story, including news media that you would have at one point completely trusted. Fox
Well,
News,
a
for
lot of them are
example.
my colleagues that haven't put me on camera to help me sell books. So the fact that I've been effed around by three different publishers, and this is a print, which is, again, there's only 200 copies available at the moment. So just from an investor point of view, if you buy this book and then sell it on Biblio and Abe, for someone, I buy rare books and the real ones cost thousands of dollars. So again, it's
Uh-huh.
for the future, but people don't see, they're myopic and they don't see that far front ahead, but I do.
Well, I had Jerome Corsi on a few days ago, and when they did his book, apparently the publishing house decided to change their mind on the title. So they had a few of them come out uh, where the word medical was used in the cover, and then another one came out where it was military or something. And so he was saying, to cover yourself, you should buy both because you never know which one might become the collector's item. So everybody needs to get one of those 200 copies.
Yeah, I
So,
have 50 left and I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to put it on Amazon, since I, the bee lady, am banned on Amazon. Really, people don't really understand when I speak to the normies, like
mhm,
what PTSD it causes to a beautiful woman who's just speaking the truth.
yeah, yeah.
Was
Now,
had
were
more
you in the
balls than most men on this planet. Let's just be honest.
Well, absolutely. I felt the same way when Sarah Palin was running for office, or Michelle Bachmann. I mean, those ladies would say things that no other male politician would say. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's still true today when you look at Congress and some of the names that stand out. they're female. They're not male usually. So yeah. Well, let's get back into
Yeah, because
this.
you watched the movie. So just to share with the audience that the movie is looking at everything that happened from 7:30 to 9:30.
Uh huh.
It was edited by the awesome Sean Hibbler, and then the book looks at everything else. So you could even swap out George Floyd, and it reads like a whodunit deep state thriller because underneath it all, there's drug cartels, there's money laundering, and there's a lot of shenanigans in Minneapolis.
Well, I have to look who the governor is. But at any rate, when I was watching it last night, I thought I knew a lot about the George Floyd thing, and then all of a sudden you're bringing up Maurice, and I'm seeing things. The footage tells a weird story, and I know that you brought it up in the movie, but everybody was so damned nonchalant about what they were doing. The way Derek Chauvin kind of strolled onto the scene with that
Saunters over.
saunters over with that look in his eye, and the same thing with the EMTs. I mean, there was absolutely no sense of urgency. Oh, we're not going to do CPR on the spot. We're going to drive down the road 5 blocks
Because it's a
and
duty to intervene exercise. So it's like, do you load and go? Do you take him? Why don't you take him to the hospital that's only 13 minutes away?
mhm. Yeah, I know all those things were going through my mind, and then, they had to wait for the fire truck before they'd take him to the hospital or something
Yeah, and the
crazy like
fire
that.
truck usually doesn't come out. So if you have an exercise, and we've lived through exercises, people know Event 201.
Mhm,
If they've read Bill Gates's latest book, there's a chapter called Practice, 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 where he delineates it. Why I mention in my book that there was a world live exercise called Cascadia Rising, which is about earthquakes. So people can understand that everybody watches Hollywood, right? You all
mhm.
have seen series like Game of Thrones or Westworld. They're very detail oriented. So why we're living in a fake and gay clown world, and this is just another episode that they're constantly leaking. If you think there's a movement to free Derek. Is Derek even alive? Why is it that the bee lady is the only one that's speaking to the guy who shanked Derek? And that is a news, and nobody wants to speak to me about it. And I'm getting cockroaches in my lunch the week of the Black Friday. Here we are a year plus later. Nobody knows the details of the weapon. Nobody knows really about John Tursak, aka Stranger, the Mexican cartel FBI agent gone rogue. So he's an embarrassment to the FBI. And so the week that's literally 60 Minutes and Fox are trying to get an exclusive, I order a burger and I get a big fat cockroach in it. How did that happen?
Can I ask what establishment?
It was a restaurant. It was a restaurant called True Food.
Okay.
I mean,
Wow.
you could say it's Florida. I mean, you could say maybe the driver put it in, but there's no way they put that burger in that small box without seeing
Mhm.
a huge ass cockroach. And
Right.
there's no way that the cockroach got in there afterwards. And I have a mention in my book to Curious George, and the same week I had a network in the perimeters called Curious George that I had never seen before, and I it's lasted a week and then it left. So it's little things like that. I know enough people that are targeted individuals. I say that they
Mhm,
tailor their torture to the person,
mhm.
and the amount of censorship as a bona fide journalist that I lost my YouTube channel, but then I'm seeing colleagues that don't even have a degree that are getting their channels back. Why is that?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's amazing how the entire deep state, if you will, just comes down on somebody at one time if they're not playing ball, so to speak. I mean, if you're not gonna toe the official line for what happened with George Floyd, that a cop kneeled on his neck and suffocated him.
And racism, don't forget.
Well, yeah. Well, let's not forget racism. I distinctly remember in the movie there was a scene where a reporter was going, and Derek Chauvin, a white cop, kneeled on the neck of a black gentleman. Yeah, I mean, it's like they've got to get that racial divide in there. And I love the little thing you did at the end of the movie with the quote from way back
Right.
when. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's been
It
it's
really
been going
puts
on.
things in perspective. And, even finding Sean, I went through several editors. I had like when I made Vanishing of the Bees, which I was in the
Hmm.
mainstream, and I freelanced for all the top magazines. My first job was at MSNBC from
Wow.
Montreal, Canada,
Uh
producing
huh.
the news for the internet. Just when, so much so it was a threat, the internet, that it was the advertising department that was in charge of the producers, because I was producing the news and basically getting the stories, and then creating, using SoundForge, using different documents to get different programs to get clips and stuff. But so I was in the mainstream, and to see the shitty job that the reporters did on this story.
Hmm.
For instance, during the federal trial, so I had to rely on pool notes. So usually
Okay.
you sign up to one pool reporter. I signed up to all of them
Mm.
so that I can get as many notes and then use my context to I draw pair connections. And I called one NBC reporter and I said, that that's not George Floyd's car. And he said, I know. So right away, I realized, like, oh, so you know stuff that you're not reporting on. And then he said this: my boss told me not to speak to people like you.
Wow.
So who's people like me? Who's your boss? A mafioso? Like what?
Hmm.
And what's people like me? A real journalist, not a prostitute and a parrot.
I can tell you when we were doing the Obama document thing, and it wasn't just the birth certificate, there were a lot of them. We held one particular press conference that really blew the lid off, and there were a couple of Fox reporters there, local, and they were so amazed, they could not wait to get back to the studio and talk about this stuff. They must I they got the ass chewing of a lifetime for repeating anything that we had said that day, and I think they might have got a real eye opener too as to how things really work. I mean, people that to this day are trusted icons within the conservative world would say things that were just absolutely unbelievable
Yeah,
and
well,
lie to protect Obama. And it's the same way here. You're never
of
going to get the
course.
truth.
Yeah. My film came out a year before the fall of Minneapolis, and Liz was shown my movie. And if you recall the scene, the shot with Tu Tao making that gesture to the extras.
Yes.
So they threw in that line. First of all, they the journalist that showed them the film chastised, like, oh, this is a conspiratorial for an
Of course.
award-winning journalist such as I,
Mhm.
and then threw in that shot completely out of sequence as a little fu to Maryam in the film, because she knows
Mm.
who I am. I'm exhaustive in my research. I reached out to Liz, and then I saw her on American Leaders, and Jan Yanelik knows me because I wrote a story that went viral, and he never hired me again. So why didn't he have me on the show? All the conservatives, I mean, colleagues of mine, why aren't they having me on the show to help me sell books when it's being suppressed and I've been effed over by three different publishers, wasting my time, dicking me around?
What happens? I mean,
Of course.
and it happens in broad daylight too, it doesn't matter. So, well, let's get back to the sequence of events because I think a lot of people are
Yeah.
confused about that,
Yeah.
and so let's talk about it. We know here's what everybody knows. George Floyd went into Cup Foods tried to pass a fake $20 bill. They didn't bite on it. I thought they had, but well, actually, they did take it from him, and then his buddy Maurice tries, and it's a no go, if I'm not mistaken.
He tried earlier that day.
Uh
They were
huh.
there 2 times, so
Am I the only
also
one getting a strange vibe on the relationship between the owner and manager of the store and the customers? I mean, somebody comes in your store, tries to pass a fake bill, and you don't do anything, and then they come back in the store later in the day and they do it again, and you only call the cops on one of them?
well, it's an operation, and, who is Mr. Adam? I tease to who
Mhm.
Mr. Adam is, but again, here, there's, like, a whole chapter on Maya, Santa Maria, El Nuevo, there's a whole chapter on Cup Foods, there's a chapter on Benjamin Crump, all the characters, and then you see how deep and interconnected this is. So, who is Mr. Adam? Does anybody even know who Mr. Adam is?
I thought
And
it was weird that the Maurice kept telling the cops, "Ask Mr. Adams. He'll tell you who I am. He'll tell you who I am." Like that was really gonna register with the cops. Why did he think that?
because he used to be a snitch.
Ah,
He used to be a
Maurice was a
snitch.
snitch or
Yeah.
Mr.
No,
Adams?
Maurice. No, Mr. Adam is with the police.
Okay.
So he's an informant. And the truth is, I would hope by now that conservatives have seen that informants, I mean, the FBI, it's all fake and gay. It's all actors. It's all people who've hoard out their souls. And also in an operation, they compartmentalize the players. So, if you're cast for an operation, you're not necessarily given other people's lines. So if George is an operative and he's told, we're going to make you Rodney 2.0. And if you recall in the movie, and Fall of Minneapolis also stole this and put it in their film completely out of context. When I stop breathing, I'm scared AF. When I stop breathing, when I stop breathing, it's going to go off on me, man.
Why
What's
don't we
that?
play that? Why don't we play that?
Sure.
I've got a couple of clips.
Man, I'm scared as fuck, man. If I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me. I can't choke. I can't breathe. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
No, I'm gonna die here.
Take a
I'm
seat.
gonna die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Take a seat. I'll roll the windows
No.
down.
Thomas Lane says, I'll stay with you. I'll put the windows down. I'll put the air
I'll roll the
on.
windows down and
Please,
you put
man.
your legs in, all right? I'll
Y'all
put the air
treat me
on.
that.
Tell me, what adult behaves like this? That an ex-con, or anyone for that matter, ought to be able to avoid getting into a squad car by declaring claustrophobia is found nowhere in case law.
I'm claustrophobic. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to
I'll roll the window down.
this. Man, I'm scared as fuck, man.
Okay. You made a mistake. Somebody
When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man.
When I stop breathing, it's going to go off on the man. Two
It's going to
things.
go off on me, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Two things about that. One, he's already predicting the thing about not breathing. And, you know, and then the other thing that struck me was how many times in the later clip did he say, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I mean, when Derek Chauvin got there, they had already tried to put him in the car, and I lost track of how many times he said, I can't breathe.
Yeah, I have
So,
it in my book. I don't know, maybe 20 plus times.
yeah. So if the man's sitting there, standing there, whatever, and he keeps saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Okay. Why should you take him seriously when he's laying on the ground and
Well,
saying that?
well, again, it's the duty to intervene exercise. So it's designed, these exercises are designed like a Gordian knot. If he does this, what do you do? If he does this, is it excited delirium? Should you have
Mhm,
given him CPR? It's an exercise. And
mhm,
sometimes people get hurt in their exercises. And
mhm.
in any case, George and Derek worked at the same club with ties to the Mexican cartel. So that because in their disclosures, David Pinney came out and said this. And now George was his boss as head security. Okay. So 24 hours later, he says that he's not good with faces, which if you think of it is a effing racist comment. So all black people look the same. He's your boss, yo. He's your boss. Oh, what are you telling me? This BS. But it's
Yeah.
injected in there. And so twice that Maryam puts an ad on Craigslist, both times, like this is months apart, in a matter within 30 minutes, my post was flagged and removed.
For
And
what
I met
reason?
exactly what reason? What reason? So, by the grace of God, a lot of things were given to me. That's why I believe that I was chosen to write this. That I ended up meeting someone here in West Palm that's from Minneapolis that's seen George and Derek at the same club.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you hire a off-duty cop and a convicted felon in the same club? So another coincidence is I befriended Nabil, who's one of the 4 Palestinian brothers. It was evident that they side with the police, that this whole BLM mask was for theatrics, to also preserve their store not getting burnt down, because you would think that'd be one of the first places
Mm-hmm.
that would get burned down. And that Nabil, I said, so do you know Maya? And I said, is her husband, because she was married for a brief moment, I said, is he the Mexican cartel? And he said, she's the Mexican cartel. And by the grace of God, he had been in jail with Maya's brother. And he
Oh.
got the whole scoop, and he said that woman is a witch. So the whole chapter on who is Maya Santa Maria, who's quite influential, where is she now? Why did she turn her back on Derek, who supposedly worked there for 17 years?
I watched the movie twice, and I was very careful, especially the second time, to look for any hint between George Floyd and Derek Chauvin that they
Right.
knew each other.
Right.
When Chauvin saw some other guy he knew, he was quick to acknowledge, "Oh yeah, I saw you a couple of weeks ago." But
Where did he see him? In what context did he see Charles McMillian? I know you. I saw you 2 weeks ago, because in my book, I say how Derek is known as the warlord of Precinct 3.
yeah, that's an interesting title. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Officer Chauvin had been in a little trouble in the past in terms of uh, potential police brutality or excessive use of force or something like that. At least that's what came out at the time.
Yeah, he's had many complaints, but he's won medals of valor even.
Mm-hmm.
And so the man, John Tursak, who shanked him, said that this is his signature move, and that he had actually pulled over. This is what John says. I didn't come across this. Pulled several women from cars, and let's say he'd see an attractive woman, and then hassle them. So if they picked a guy whose signature move, and again, one of the reasons conservatives are not having me on is that they have this whole movement to free Derek, but do they want Maryam to be coming on and go, Derek went to the School of Assassins and graduated as a cook? What? What was he
That's my
doing in the
reaction.
School of Assassins, training where they train dictators? What was he doing in Germany? What was he doing while he should have been working at on his job as a cop? So, even it's like once you dissect things, because at the time we're all under lockdown, so we're all emotionally suggestible, and no one's really asking the nitty gritty and dissecting and deconstructing. And I don't think that they banked for Maryam, because this cockroach thing. I have literally, I go by the bee lady because of people would say over and over, aren't you that bee lady? So it's a
Right.
duck, pun intended, because it's memorable. And
Right.
so I would say out loud, oh yeah, you think I go by the bee lady, but you must wonder why I'm still around like a cockroach, and then get a cockroach in my lunch.
Wow. Wow.
And my friends, Mark, the real heroes on the front lines, not the fake people who are now, oh, all of a sudden you're into health and wellness. Where were you? I've been in this space for 12 years. So there's not, there's a lot of fakeness, lack of authenticity, lack of doing nitty-gritty real research. Real
Hmm.
investigations take years. This is a real investigation.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna get a copy. I have
Yeah,
to.
I would
I have
love
to have
that.
a yeah. Uh, I think one of those nitty-gritty details, and it just comes under the umbrella of common sense, is a question you asked in the book about and in, the movie as well, I believe. How in the hell do you have a guy passing counterfeit bills and the police don't seem the least bit interested in where the bill came from, how he got it? Was he involved in counterfeiting, or did someone just give it to him, and which is unlikely considering Maurice had some too, and you saw him with that big wad. So they weren't even the least bit interested in that?
Well, the truth is that the only agency in charge of fake money is the Secret Service. I did a Freedom of Information Act, and you could see in the book what came up. What I was going to say is that during this time, I didn't finish my thought. We were
I'm sorry.
all, being locked down, and that this event in the multi-layered is also was allowed us to go from virus to violence literally overnight, and was even used to get more vaccines into the number one vaccine hesitant population, Black people. Like,
Mm,
oh, look, the government cares about systemic racism. Maybe Tuskegee wasn't true, and this is a safe inoculation.
uh-huh.
Fauci went
Well,
door to door, right, to the
I
Black
as
community.
again, as someone who was in the drug industry, you don't bring a vaccine out in less than a year.
Right.
I
It takes
mean,
8 to 12
it's
years
just
usually.
we were all so afraid, in America, people were afraid and they took it because they thought, "Oh wow, everybody's dying," which isn't true. Uh, I better take this. I know it's risky, but I don't want to get COVID. And it's amazing when you frighten people what you can get them to do.
Absolutely. Fear.
Abs
I mean, I have been covering the dark side, and it was swallowing me up, and I liken it to the Heath Ledger effect. Just slowly, it's a lot of darkness. And
Now, you made a reference to PTSD. I'm guessing that
my PTSD,
huh?
yeah,
Yeah,
I have canceled PTSD.
cancel PTSD? So meaning the experience you've gone through because of this is the result of
I
your
just
PTSD.
honestly, Mark, I have a business of 15 years, and I
Mhm,
just got infiltrated by Procter and Gamble. And only very few people on my level can understand that. But
mhm,
for instance, I was just speaking to the Children's Health Defense Los Angeles chapter because I was going to write for a Defender, and they hired someone very nice, get the keys to the kingdom, F shit up. Excuse my language. So
that's okay.
uh, I, I, I'm looking at bankruptcy. They're looking. I have a very viable company and a viable
Mhm,
brand, but I'm doing it all alone. So they, you know, they isolated me, gaslit me, um, entrenched themselves in the company, and then took the money for themselves. Most of the money. I tried my best, but I was told to empower them. In any case, this is common. They tailor the torture to the person,
mhm,
and most people have hoard out their souls, and that's the only thing you take with you when you pass on. And
mhm,
that includes, I mean, if you think about it, my family works for big pharma. My dad worked for Procter and Gamble and
mhm,
Pfizer as a mechanical engineer, and has disowned me, but he's a Christian. My
mhm,
uncle, I tried to warn him, My uncle was in Florida and died with a 2-1 punch of run, death is near, plus a ventilator. And this was before I even knew about Brian Artis speaking against ventilator associated pneumonia. I did a deep dive on my Substack, which is the only place I'm allowed to write, and even that is questionable over there, about the ventilators and who instituted those protocols. And there's a lot of people, it's even, I'm more dangerous because I know who's who in the zoo. I've gotten really close to the Wizard of Oz.
You know, it's funny you mention that. I hate to keep bringing up Arpaio, but his lead investigator, Mike Zullo, and I had a conversation one day. And one of the things Mike said about someone we were speaking about is this guy's like some kind of damned Wizard of Oz. And so he decided from that point forward that we were going to codename this individual Oz.
Mm.
2 days later, New York Times wrote a story about the guy we were talking about, and they said he's some kind of real life Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
And he showed it to me, and he was like, "Now, what did we say the other day?" And I was like, "Holy!" They were listening to us, and so it's about you don't. It sound people say, "Oh, it's conspiratorial," and they say that with such arrogance, you know. I can remember having someone on my audio talk podcast years and years and years ago, well known author, and I brought up Obama's documents, which there are 3 of concern, not just the birth certificate. And the guy was like, "I stay away from things that are conspiratorial," kind of in a looking down his
Roll
nose
my
at me.
eyes.
Yeah. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like to have people laugh at me and make fun of me and write articles about me that
Oh yeah.
I'm some kind of a
And
nut.
smeared as, do you know, Mark, that in March 2020 that the FTC, DOJ, and FDA launched Operation Quack Hack? That they
No,
went, I
didn't
had
know it.
done a Man on the Street with Zach Voorhees for InfoWars, and I
Hmm.
told him, let's do this. Is like January, this is before the Oscars. Nobody knows this is going to be a thing. I call this the virus that didn't cry wolf. And they went after Alex. Well, they went after Mark Grenon, who has Genesis Church, who was donating chlorine dioxide. And when Trump said drinking detergent, he was referencing. So they
Oh,
went after Mark, they went after Alex, then they went after me, and they shut me down for using the word prevention in the same sentence as coronavirus, for selling silver. And I had to go to Mike Adams to help me break the story. Meanwhile, I'm an award-winning journalist. So it's different if people have been canceled, but they're like a nurse, or like, this is not your profession. This is not how you made money. And I am a damn good journalist. So I've had to resign. This book was my final assignment. I'm writing a second book, but now I'm working on my company, trying to manifest a COO with vision, because I have vision. And I know, like I said, I know a lot of people who were the real heroes, not
hmm.
the fake ones, who were on the front line standing for your medical freedom.
Well, going back to the pandemic and hydroxychloroquine, uh, I don't go around correcting Donald Trump that often, but I remember telling my wife, he went about this the wrong way. He said that there's surveys in Europe suggesting that hydroxychloroquine, if given early in the disease state, would actually help. And everybody went freaking crazy. I mean, there was that one guy at Fox News, I've already forgotten his name, who was saying Trump's got blood on his hands. He's telling people to use this and it's killing people. Literally said that. And I said, all Trump had to do, if he wanted people to try that, was say, there's this drug in Europe, and a survey just found that hydroxychloroquine is offering hope. However, it doesn't have that indication in the United States. It's used for malaria. So I'm going to ban the use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19. every liberal in the country would have been on the front lawn of the White House holding up signs. We demand hydroxychloroquine now. You know, Trump has blood on his hands because he's denying the people hydroxychloroquine. You know, it's just like the thing about sports teams being named after Native American groups.
Right.
If Trump issued an executive order and said no more teams can be named after Native Americans, I'm banning that. Every damn liberal group in America would say he's discriminating against Native American groups. Why can't they have sports teams?
Well, it
Blah blah
just
blah.
shows how psychologically, excuse me, how easily people can be psychologically manipulated. And
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, even the hydrochloroquine and the ivermectin, it's still two sides of the same coin. They
Mm-hmm.
have control of both sides. There's tons of people who are about the money that I
Mm-hmm.
know that banked on those medications. But where were these people? I've been in this health and wellness space again, 2012, been covering vaccines, so much so that I went to the jungle. I mean, I knew to go to the jungle because why? In October 2019,
Is that why you were in Costa Rica?
yeah, I
Okay.
initially, I mean, I've been there before, but I specifically went with the hunch that this country was going to shut down, and then I saw it unfurling over there. But I want to say in October 2019 in Samoa, I wrote about it for Dr. Tenpenny, and I did a segment with Zach for InfoWars and called the government of Samoa. So they mass vaccinated 200,000 people in 30 days based on 7 cases of non-deadly measles. So I called the government and they passed the law of love. And the law of love says that the government has jurisdiction over your child. And the parents were literally hiding their children in the attics, in the jungle. And you had to put like a red flag outside the door if you had been vaccinated. But this was a test run. Of course, Billy Boy Gates, his vaccine was used because oftentimes they're dangerous, the vaccines, and then they change the name and they dump them in another country. And having read I forget now the late SPARS pandemic, the SPARS um, exercise. You could see even when we got to the point where they were admitting on the vaccine injuries. I mean, I was covering it blow by blow. I called nursing homes. I called the FDA. I called the CDC. I called, like a real journalist. And only to see colleagues of mine get their YouTube channel back. But I, with an actual degree as a journalist and accolades, cannot get my channel back. They permanently deleted it and they throttle me. I can't get certain numbers even though I've been around for 25 years.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah. And X is the same way, depending on who
But it's
you
gotten
were.
so bad.
Yeah, you either got your account back or you did not. And now I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yeah.
I saw when I watched the movie there were some other videos there, so I decided to watch them, and they were the ones with you getting tossed off the train. So I'm going
You
to
got to
ask
see
you,
that?
what's that?
You got to see that? I
Yeah,
I almost got arrested on the Bright Line by a hive mind woke ass. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I just watched it, and you were on a train, and you were on a phone talking to your friend Melissa. You're walking down the aisle, you say the F word.
But not to anyone, by the way.
I was going there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah.
You're talking to your friend Melissa on the phone, and apparently they accused you of saying the F word to someone you were passing on the aisle or something crazy like that. And then the next thing you know, you're surrounded by these attendants, and they're telling you to get off the train. And
They stopped the whole train for 20 minutes. I was bullied by a mob of arguably hive mind, all jabbed robots. And they told me that I violated an anti-foul language policy. So
Which
I
they, of
went,
course, had posted.
sorry?
Right? I said, which they, of course, had posted. I'm being sarcastic.
I know it doesn't even exist. So they, the entire train is stopped. I'm in my pain body of my PTSD, and
Mhm.
I'm totally like, don't know what the F Twilight Zone. Luckily, Melissa was on the phone with me to witness it. And they said, you filed this anti-foul language policy, get off the train. And I said, this is not my stop. I'm not getting off the train. So 20 minutes, then they're like, you're stopping the train. You're stopping the train. And I'm like, stop gaslighting me. You're stopping the train. So then I started using their woke language of like, I'm being threatened. I'm in my pain body. And they say you're going to get arrested. For what? For trespassing. But I have a ticket. So when I got escorted down, okay, a woman to my right was just doing her job, just relaying the lines like a puppet. So when we got down, and this is on camera too, I don't know if it was posted up. I said, do you really have an anti-foul language policy? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I
And
remember. I saw
you
that.
you saw the cop. The cop is right there. Nobody comes to talk to me. So what was all of this theatrics? Was it a hive mind experiment where they could tell my frequency? I have a very high frequency. I had just had a kundalini. I had been spending time alone, meditating, just really in solitude, and went out in the wild. And when I came home, I mean, I lost it because I have PTSD. I was like, what the F just happened? This is Twilight Zone.
Mhm.
What did you think?
What I was going to ask you is, do you think you were singled out just like you've been singled out for so many other things, or is this some kind of crazy coincidence?
I think I think that down the road we will see that there is a hive mind ability for people who've been jabbed. I certainly, and so have my colleagues, have seen that there's nobody home. I just wrote for my Substack the jab and heart coherence. And it's not an accident that they created a bioweapon, not a vaccine that targets the heart, because the heart has more power than the brain. And you need to raise your frequency, you need to be in your heart. So if it's a energetic center, and this is like our throat chakra, our third eye, our crown, and the system wants to keep you in your lower, effing, taking drugs, drinking, lower level. The heart is the meeting point. So I can tell on the phone. I'm clairaudient. I can tell people are vaccinated. Of course, there's different batches. People got saline, but so in my Substack, I write about a ACE2 receptor down cascade to VMA2, which is the God particle, the connection to histamine, and then to memory. And I'm witnessing, I don't know what you're witnessing, but just people are vacated. The zombies are here. The future is now.
Yeah. Well, I was jabbed. I had a mother at the time who was really worried about catching it and dying. And even though I knew it was a huge risk, I did it for her.
You got a
But
one jab, Johnson and Johnson, or what?
it was 3 Moderna.
Wow. Wow.
So at this point, I can infiltrate the jabbies, because I'm one of them, and let you
For
know what
you.
they're
Well,
thinking.
hopefully, if you looked up the lot, like I said, they gave a lot of different things to different people because this was
Experiment.
an exercise. It's like early on, I was in the jungle and I was telling my mom, this is March. Mommy, there's going to be a vaccine that's going to come out. Don't take it. She'd already been injured by the flu vaccine. And she said, but Mary, how could the whole world be in on this? Meanwhile, I'm in Costa Rica seeing it unfurl in a delayed fashion. And then she paused and she said, how about Fauci? So, she's vaccine injured today. My stepdad is the only reason he's alive is he has a pacemaker. And I've interviewed hundreds of people. So again, there's different batches. They had to stagger their deaths, and hopefully, you're fine if you have your brain, and it's something in the heart. People are not in their heart.
Well, one of the things we're seeing, as you well know, is an increase in the rate of myocarditis. And not only that, we're seeing it in young people, really young people,
Oh yeah,
high school athletes, college
my
athletes.
niece had it. She was 14,
Oh my
but
gosh.
it was
Yeah.
mild. Oh, my mom says it's mild. Oh, okay, just a little heart inflammation.
Just to, yeah. It's really sad the way some people look at the planet, want to conquer it, and are willing to, look at us all like a bunch of lab rats that they can play God with. And we're
Including supposed God-loving people.
sure, yeah, that's you know,
Yeah,
I,
it's a
I'm
lot
not
of
even gonna.
hypocrisy.
Yeah, that's how I define the left. Is they're all a bunch of hypocrites. Let me see a few more things we can go down the line. Do you have time, or I don't want to? I've
Yeah,
already
yeah,
held you.
yes, absolutely. If you have any questions, I don't know if I sent you the book or the PDF.
I actually
Um,
had the PDF and I looked through it a little bit, but
okay,
given time restraints, I didn't get a
right,
chance. But I want to read it and have you back on, and we'll do it. We can do it extremely deep dive. I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're a conspiracy theorist. I think that you see facts.
I have receipts.
You have the receipts.
I do.
And it's like I told people back during the Obama birth certificate, social security card, draft registration card days. Um, people would say, Mark, I can't believe you're getting involved in this. And I said, if you had seen the things I've seen, you'd want to get involved too. And I said, and while we're speaking about that, and I was talking to a doctor who was a friend of mine, that's one of the weird things about being a drug rep, all your friends are doctors. But
Right.
yeah, so and I asked the guy, I said, have you even looked, say, at Obama's birth certificate, enlarged it to see all the obvious cutting and pasting? And he was like, no. And I said, well, then why are you so adamant that there couldn't possibly be anything wrong with it? He said, oh, I figured if there was, Fox News would have already done something about it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, Fox News. And I remember who it was. It was Neil Cavuto. He was the one that was saying that Trump had blood on his hands for mentioning hydroxychloroquine. It
Well,
was
a lot of people said a lot of things that, I did a PSA called Admit You're Wrong. So it was a spoof, and I think it's pretty hilarious. But it's like,
okay.
it's different if, you took the vaccine for whatever reason, and you admit that you're wrong, or you admit, like, yeah, people took it because they were bullied, or they thought they were protecting others, which is not true.
My case,
Uh,
yeah.
so a lot of people were like that, but it's like, you still chose to do it. Like, we're not victims, and we have to take, a lot of times people learn through a health tragedy. I mean, I was hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet across the cement and had to learn how to walk again, and
When
got
was this?
doused. 29 at 29, I'm 52 years old. Believe it or not,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm 52, and I reversed lupus, and I learned how to walk again. So I know what's possible. It
Great.
also makes me dangerous if I'm educated on functional medicine. I have accreditation, and I've been in extreme pain, physical pain. So, now I'm resigned as a journalist. When you have a kundalini, I was already intuitive. My intuitive skills amped up, and I'm just working one-on-one for people who want to take their health in their own hands, and if they have a spiritual practice, to be mindful of the mind body soul connection. So yeah,
Now
I
let's talk. Now I think you've also described yourself as an intuitive, as a empath.
yeah,
How has that helped you in your investigative journalism?
that's a great question. I've used my hunches.
Hmm.
For instance, I think Maurice is a snitch. Do a FOIA. I think Cup Foods has a bigger role in this. Let me look into it. I want to do a search and see what the financials are. So I did a FOIA for George. So just following my hunches and looking deeper has definitely helped me a lot. I have a reputation of like injecting myself, Hunter S. Thompson, into the story. I did not know I would befriend Maurice, and I didn't know I was going to befriend the guy who stabbed Derek. So yeah, I definitely have used my hunches. Or for instance, is there a drug corridor by chance between Minneapolis and Texas? Do people know that even in his Wikipedia page, George's BS Wikipedia page, that he was a truck driver? You know, just like Derek is the modern day Martin Berg. I have one of, like, so if I were to share the audience some of the many chapters, because again, it's a record, but it reads like a whodunit. So George Floyd and the rise of Jacobin justice, introduction to a psyop, George Floyd hot off the press. I Can't Breathe is born again, because we used that with Eric Garner, and they recircled it in conjunction with bringing out the face diapers. A Tale of Two Autopsies, Conga Latin Bistro, El Nuevo Rodeo, The Politics Behind Prosecution, Keith Ellison Revisited, Hush Money and the Floyd Family Legacy, Tax Evasion Time Lapse, Blood Debts and Human Sacrifice, 6 Ways to Detect a False Flag Event, The Anatomy of a Psychological Operation. So it's like all the chapters, everything's connected, but it's showing you all, it's basically how you make the sausage.
Think that the closer you get to a situation, the more shocked one becomes. The more shocked one becomes as to what is actually going on. And I still, for the life of me, and again, I know I've already said this, but in the movie, and I saw that you'd mentioned it in the book too, I believe, the way everyone was just kind of operating in slow motion. Now, Derek Chauvin kneeled on the side of the neck, and I think we can show this
Okay.
real quick.
Show the camera perspective bias.
That's what we're gonna do.
But again, if you take it into consideration, this is an exercise, right? So when you have an exercise, it's like, is it this or is it this? What do you do if
Let's see,
it's
that
this?
looks really bad. It looks like
does
he's
look
about to
really
break
bad.
it. It looks like
It
he's
looks
about
very bad, which is meant to
Yeah,
be.
now look at this one though. The knee doesn't, it seems to be like it's touching the shoulder. So all of us,
Also, Mark, in that shot, they said that his hand, people think Derek's hand was in his pocket, but if you look really closely, it's not in his pocket. So little things like that.
yeah. I've talked to a guy one time who said he noticed that every time he was involved in a story in some way, like if he was part of some event and the media was covering it or whatever, anytime he was part of a news story, the story was never right. They were always filled with little bitty errors that, made him wonder, okay, I know this story. I know the truth here, and this is what they put in the paper. So what else am I reading in the paper that's not true? And I think you have to feel the same way for all the investigative work you did. For example, the counterfeit money. How could the police just not even care about that? I don't begin to
or the fake
understand.
fentanyl, right? Again,
Right.
where is the Secret Service? Where is the Secret Service? You could see in the book what they told me when I ran the Freedom of Information Act. But another telltale sign of a psychological false flag operation is if you consider that after 9:30 or 10, this turned into a crime scene where you have a multi-jurisdictional agencies. So if this happened to you or me, the FBI would not be showing up.
No.
Right? So that's
wouldn't
another
think.
another little. So again, when you unpack and deconstruct a magic trick,
Mm-hmm.
then you see. But because people, there's so much prevalence on just trusting your five senses when there's so much going on. And I mean, in this age of Aquarius, this golden age, we're seeing that there is a split happening where there's people who just want to be in the ego and the mainstream, like BS, or people who want to elevate and be an exalted self. Because there's tons of Christians who are not living like Christ, like Jesus Christ, who was an exalted man. It's all, I mean, they've been lying since the early religious founders. This is a playbook. This outlines how like I said, how the sausage is made and beyond the magic trick. And because it comes with receipts, then it's dangerous. I mean, there is a whole Washington Post book with actual dialogue between George, who's dead. So that's AKA fiction, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are you recreating? And yet this was a number one bestseller. And when I called Maurice, he thought I was a Washington Post. You know,
Mm-hmm.
then we actually connected and he's calling me mama. I'm the one who told him, dude, your public defender doesn't give a crap about you. I called her. I scanned her voice. Don't forget, she's still with the government. And then
Mm-hmm.
weeks later, so Mark, the day after I did a 2-hour exclusive with Maurice on the anniversary, I think it was the 3rd anniversary, he got arrested. So Joel
A
Gilbert then
little late,
told
wasn't
me,
it?
well, because he was a loose end. They promised he would be a key witness, but he was the loose end, and if the people don't buy anything, they can just pin the tail on the Maurice and
Mm-hmm.
say that he's the one who gave them the drugs. So did he have drugs that day? Yeah. Did George? And another thing, the lab, it's NMS Labs that did the toxicology. Medical examiner Andrew Baker is the only one that called the toxicology. However, if you're running a toxicology, you have to say, I want you to look at fentanyl. So there could have been something in there that was not found. Then, of course, the tale of the two autopsy, because we rolled out Michael Baden, the Hollywood BS medical examiner, who never even touched the body. So also, if I were to ask you, who do you think buried who organized not 1, not 2, but 4 funerals of George Floyd?
Where did the money come from?
That's a different, well, they raised the money. It's a laundering,
Okay.
but
Okay.
who organized it?
Gotcha. Yeah.
What would you say?
There are so many questions, and it's kind of like the world of science. They say the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Well, it's the
So
United States government that organized the funerals while you boys and girls at home buried your loved one via Zoom. And they changed our death rituals.
I went through that, by the way. My father passed in uh, June of 2020, and I went through the whole thing of no, you can't get in to see him. You can only get in if we believe his life is going to be ending shortly. And then they released him to a nursing home across the street for rehab, and he had a heart attack. And I ran to the hospital, and they kept saying, you can't go in, you can't go in.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
yeah, and then,
It's devastating.
when I was allowed to go in, he was dead. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
it's one of those things.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to have a father pleading on the phone, "Mark, why won't you come see me?" And I said, "I've been trying. They won't let me in." I mean, it's just it's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I
at
went
least your
through it and I
dad's
handled
talking.
it,
He
but
was talking to you. My dad is disowned me for 4 years. A beautiful, courageous, intelligent, sensitive daughter that he named me after the Virgin Mary, and because I'll slash him with my truth. I can't talk idle chit chat. Messaged him, would JC wear a face diaper? Jesus forgives. You hypocritical Christian.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into the details, but I have a family member that won't talk to me anymore. So,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
common across the board. A lot of us have, you know, that's like it's like what is love really? What is unconditional love?
I, you know, I realized that I had a political difference with this person. And so over 3 years ago, I just said, okay, we're never going to discuss politics again. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's putting a wedge. So we didn't. So when Trump won in 2024, somehow I was responsible. And I was told,
You
I'm
were.
never,
Thank
I'm
you.
never talking to anybody that voted for Trump again. Although I'll be nice and talk to you. And I thought, okay. And then about 2 months later, I was told, I'm not going to talk to you either. So it hurts. It hurts a lot, and I hate to see families being divided right up the middle because of where we are in this country right now. You know, you've got a group of people who think drag queens in kindergarten classrooms are perfectly okay, that men belong in women's sports and women's bathrooms and women's locker rooms, that open borders are great for all of us. I don't know how you get people, you know, to believe that. I don't know. I mean, the
Sweetheart, people, they're not embodied, and you know, the only thing you take with you when you go is your soul. And
mhm.
I I'm blessed that I have wisdom, and in the face why I'm so confident. I mean, I'm a immigrant. Montreal, was a chubby nerd, and I've done really good. I
That's
never.
hard to imagine at this point.
Oh, that's nice. No, but definitely it was a nerd. And I've had to work really hard to get where I am. I'm proud of who I am.
Sure.
And I know in the end, the only thing that remains is your soul. And mine's going to be light as a feather. And I'm not disillusioned. I want the truth and nothing but the truth, even
How
if it
does it make
hurts.
you feel as one of those people who not only wants the truth and looks for the truth, but fights for the truth as you do? To see how, we talked about the cops and the EMTs being rather nonchalant during the George Floyd incident, but there are people who are like that about everything in life. It's like, oh, I don't care. I would tell people, don't you care that Joe Biden sent his son around the globe to collect money for doing nothing? And they'd be like, no, it doesn't affect me, you know. And how do you feel about all these people who just sort of take the path of least resistance and don't even give a damn about what's going on around them?
Well, as far as like if you were to ask me today about the politics or what's happening, I don't care. I care about my
Okay.
internal, but because I think it's all a Hollywood, it's all clown show. And I'm a journalist, and I didn't think I could turn it off. I sacrificed my spiritual self for 4 years on the front lines. Uh, I didn't whore out my soul. I just think people don't even have souls anymore, and it's very sad, but it's all distraction. And right now, I'm just focused on uh, literally surviving after all the damage that's been done. I've given my power away, living from my heart, and I don't know. It's become a clown world, and I just want to do my work that I don't come back to this. I know reincarnation is real. I know that the
Mhm.
Christians took it out of the Bible, whether people like to believe it or not. And I am confident in who I am. And it's become it's a very lonely world. But I'm not willing to go and hang out. Like I rather learn and study, and it's quality over quantity. So
Have you read a book called Soul Survivor?
No, what is that book?
It is a really good book. I had a doctor recommend it to me about this kid who was a reincarnated World War II pilot and started having all these flashbacks. They would buy him airplanes, toy airplanes, and the first thing he would do was do this with them and crack the propellers off of them.
Mm,
Okay. He
mm.
knew things he shouldn't know. He was 4 years old, and his mom bought him a plane at a toy store, and she goes, "Look, honey, it has torpedoes." It's like and sh he looked at it and he goes, "No, those aren't torpedoes, mommy. Those are drop tanks that have fuel in them."
Well, the truth
And
is that, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, and the coincidences kept piling up.
Yeah,
All the things this kid knew that he shouldn't know.
yeah.
And this, I'll jump further down in the book. They had a reunion of the people who were on the ship that he said he was on. So they took him there.
Wow.
And he's kind of the focus because everybody knows this kid's coming who says he was on the ship and all this stuff. And so he goes around and he knows everybody's name.
That's awesome.
And so he's like shaking hands with them. And this one guy said, "Yeah, I gained so much weight. I can't believe you recognize me." And he goes, "Well, to be honest, I recognized your voice." So they also brought the sister of the person that the
Mhm,
kid supposedly is the reincarnation of. And
mhm.
he went up and called her by a nickname that she said only her brother had called her. So anyway, it's called Soul Survivor. It's a
Yeah.
really good book, and if you don't believe in reincarnation, read the book, and you're at least going to start thinking about it. So,
Well, there's a
um,
book called Old Souls, and a professor who was in McGill that went to, sorry, war torn places like Beirut.
mhm.
And if you're born, if you die in a trauma, you'll carry that wound. And the truth is that we're all programmed to forget reincarnation. But I had my spiritual awakening at 13 years old. So I've been working from soul stance, and I know that this is my last life, this is not my first rodeo. When you have a Kundalini, which is our innate divinity, which the Christians turned into a snake and demonified. Um, but the CIA, the military, they know the power of the Kundalini because then you're more in your right brain. So I got a lot of downloads and remembered my first story as a journalist that I pitched to the Montreal Gazette was on the rise of cremation. So how many 23-year-old chicks go and meet the man who's burning bodies underground? And then I ended up going to the coroner's office in Los Angeles after I was hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet and would have ended up there. And I realized after the Kundalini, it's because I was part of the funerary process in Egypt, where we used to take 70 days to usher the soul back to the stars. And we put frankincense and myrrh and ormus, and that these mofos are putting formaldehyde. So I have always gravitated, well, from a teenager to death. I even went to the premiere of 6 Feet Under in Hollywood. I was very big fan of that show, and I just
Mhm.
really looked at death and dying from a close perspective. So I have remembered my past lives. And that's why I'm
Mhm.
so confident now, because in the face of these sheeple people, in the face of this mediocrity, I know I could be, how many times I've said, I love your passion. Well, if I could live on every time someone, said that to me, it's just
Mhm.
I'm being myself. And again,
Mhm.
I had to work really hard to find my voice. French is my first language. I was a nerd from Montreal, Canada. And I think more and more people who haven't lost their heart and know that there's a soul, they will find me. I'll share it to people that I have a live show on Rumble called Truth Lives Here. But I'm mostly
Mhm.
looking after covering vaccines, and I have a lot of health topics as a functional medicine coach, but I'm not personally looking at politics anymore. It's just a distraction to me, for
I
me.
understand. Now, you said this is your last life. How do you know that?
because I
I know you're
call
an
it.
empath, but what's
I
that?
call it. I call it, and I'm being shown how to operate my Merkaba and getting shown on how to exit this planet. The fact that there's now people who are having void academies, they're charging you to learn how to or telling people, because I see patterns. So in the spiritual community now, they're even like one woman is saying that there's a pause on the Archon death trap, like die now, you can escape. So I just choose not to. You can die consciously, and I just I'm not coming back. I don't even want to be like an ascended master in a higher realm. I want to get the F out of here. This transhumanist agenda is putting us, we're in a simulation. They're going to put us in a further simulation, and they want us to, they're turning us into batteries. People are just like they're just going through their day, not even really embodied.
Mm.
That's my perspective.
I'll tell you a story. We've both been very open with each other.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And when I was a little kid, my mom read an ad in the paper that somebody had some item for sale. And we went to this pretty big old mansion, 3-story house kind of place. So we walk in and I take off running. And my mom was like, you know, like going, oh my God, what's my kid doing? Right. I'm in somebody else's house and I'm just running to a different part of the house. And she goes, Mark, where are you going? And I said, they've got a little piano that's just the right size for kids. So I turned this corner and there it was. And I started hitting the keys and everything. And everybody was just like,
How
because
old
I
were
had,
you?
at that time, I want to say it was about maybe kindergarten age.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 or 6. And, everybody was just like, "You've never been in this house before. How did you know that?" And I said, "I just knew." It's like
And
when I walked
that
in.
is gnosis.
Yeah, that's what?
Gnosis. That's
I
why
don't.
the Gnostics were so persecuted, because knowing something is arrogant, comes off as arrogant and can't be. It's like, how do you know? I just know.
Mhm,
I just know some things. And
mhm.
that's Gnostics. That's gnosis.
Hmm. Well, it's a good story for telling at Halloween and Christmas and, uh
Well, there's a lot more. Look, I have had in the past year, I was saying to myself as a joke that when I consciously put my spiritual self, I do a lot of inner work. I'm very aware of how I come across. I know I have PTSD. I know when I'm in my pain body. It's called emotional intelligence. I put myself on the back burner. I risked a lot for standing for others. And I was saying to myself, when this book is done, I'm having my own effing great reset. And the fact that I had a Kundalini, and people take 20 years to try to have a Kundalini. I had, and it's not sexual, okay? I'm not telling you this if you're audience. I was at my desk. I was tapping into a man that I thought had gone missing and had a spontaneous orgasm at my desk. Nothing sexual. And I didn't know it was a Kundalini. And then I went and I did plant medicine after I finished the book. And I
Mhm,
was told a lot of things. Um, and I was told, you're an ancient soul. Do not listen to anybody else. And the only reason, for instance, I've allowed people into my company, Honey Colony, and empowered them because I didn't trust my intuition, because I had bad vibes about all these people. And most people, like, you know, the story of the pail of crabs, like there's a fisherman,
no.
a seasoned fisherman walking, and some guy goes, oh, you better put a cap on that pail. You're going to lose your crabs. Don't worry. As soon as one crab goes up, it get pulled down. So people don't want abundance. I'm all about cross-pollinating, but I've seen a lot of people that know me. They know I'm a damn good journalist. They could just retweet me and help me sell books. Why aren't
Mhm.
they?
I will.
Thank you, sweetheart. But you're not compromised human being. You know, people are compromised, and that's what I mean. It's like, do you believe in your soul? We're We're living in a system now where we're literally, glorifying people like George Floyd, making them a modern messiah, while we're imprisoning God-loving people. Because I know people who've been submitted to mental wards, who've been spent years in the hospital, in the prison. Like Mark Renau's sons are facing 12 years for conspiring against the government with chlorine dioxide. So that could be me. I know that. I having almost died, I don't take things for granted. I have a lot of gratitude, and my process right now is alchemizing the anger that I have, because I have righteous rage.
I saw a little of that in that one video.
Which, oh yeah, oh my God, that is embarrassing. I mean, it was really traumatized me. What can I say?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well,
Thank you.
before I let you go, and I do want to have you back for sure. Let me read the book first.
Yes, please.
Go ahead and let's do some plugging.
Sure. So I would invite people to buzz on over to honeycolony.com. And I also have simplytransformative.com. I was one of the first literally online to sell CBD. I was one of the first to sell methylene blue. So Honey Colony is a magazine and marketplace that aims to empower people. Everything on there are things that I've vetted and that I use. I would invite people to come on to maryamhenein.substack.com. That's where I'm working on my second book, which is about quantum entanglement and twin flames and Age of Aquarius and metaphysical topics mostly. And then you can get the movie on and the book on maryamhenein.com/George Floyd book. And then lastly, my show is live Fridays at 3. I think this Friday I'm interviewing Dr. Jonathan Group again. So we look at metaphysics and health and wellness to empower people to be their own best health advocate, and people can work with me. I'm focusing more and more on consults, people who want to find their soul's purpose or have me fuse like intuitive skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just more working on solutions one-on-one, because I've reached the glass ceiling. What am I going to do? It's not like anyone's hiring me despite my skills.
How did they get the movie?
So they get the movie on maryamhenein.com, and it's under a tab called DVDs. I'd like to say that The Fall of Minneapolis came out a year after my film, and that My Movies Plus, they told me that the Mike Cernoviches and the spooks like Jack Posobiec would share the film. They know about my movie, and they didn't. My quarterly check was $24. So please come and support a real journalist, because I really would appreciate that to continue doing my work. Because nothing I do is monetized unless you sign up for my Substack. The book right now, I was selling it for $100 a pop because it's a limited edition.
Right.
So now it's $66.66. But if you think like you're going to go get a blowout and spend $300 on your hair, this is 5 years of my work. Do you think $66 could do anything to cover my thousands? I mean, honestly, I make $40 on a book. It's not, I didn't do this for money, but I need to make ends meet. So
Sure, we all do.
It's worth every penny.
Oh, I'm sure. And don't forget, when you have a limited edition, it's going to be a collector's item. And
exactly. If you
Yeah.
sign it, you can get a signed copy, and then you could, sell it in the future if you want.
Okay. No, it's like I think one day, and I don't know how soon it's going to happen for you, but
It'll be
people are
my
going
time.
and someone of prominence is going to recognize you
Yes.
as someone who was telling the truth when no one else would. It will happen.
It will happen. I see that too. Authenticity is the highest frequency, and people turn into my show because I am real. I when they say I'm passionate, I feel something in the moment, I have that superpower that I could tap into it, but that's, I have joy in my heart. I just am healing from this pandemic because we've, the species, the mascot for our species now is the ostrich.
Say that one more time.
The mascot for the human species has become the ostrich.
Because we put our head in the sand? Okay. Well, it's sad but true. I think that falls right in line with what I said about all the path of least resistance people. So yeah, that's another way of putting it. Well, we're gonna put up a
Thank you,
big
Mark.
thing with all your URLs.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna get the book and read it,
Yes.
and we will go through the book in a little more detail. But the movie was great. I want to give you a couple of more compliments. One, you have a great narration voice.
Thank you. I
You
do British accent. I'm looking forward to doing the audio. I just haven't had, I'm still looking to see who can help me get it on Amazon because I'm banned.
that is
So
absolutely
thank
great.
you.
Now,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
I'll be back in touch as soon as I get the book digested and have some intelligent
Thank you,
questions,
Mark.
hopefully, to ask you about the book. But this has all been very enlightening. Again, as someone who thought he had followed the George Floyd case, I learned so much just from that 1 hour movie that I didn't know before.